Okay, here where I am, it's 11:57 p.m. and I intend to record a video about logic and social justice and IQ, income, and yeah. But first, I will just show my ethical standards. I'm not sure that I will respect them, but yeah, I just show this now in my videos. That's how I will behave. I will try to. Maybe I will have more standards, but yeah. I let people read. I've just posted a video in which I talked about this, but I try to express as much as possible as an introductory for my videos. And now the table board. I was thinking about making a video about logic. What else? But I got inspired and I said to myself, I'm gonna make a video about logic for Americans. Because yeah. But actually it's for everyone, but I guess most of the people who will watch this, the very few in the first chronological moment will be most American, but actually it's for everyone, because precisely my message consists in saying that there's only one mind and it's universally valid when the truth is expressed. But here I will talk about American society. But first I will show the full formal presentation of the totality of being in the process of becoming conscious of itself. There is logic, nature, and spirit. These are the three moments of the European Trinity. That's a pagan symbol, but it can also be a Christian symbol. It's simply the Trinity, the mind of God, nature, which is the body of God, one can say, and the consciousness that man can acquire of God through self-awareness, self-inquiry, and knowledge, in a way. And there are three moments in each sphere, in each triangle: being, essence, concept, for logic, mechanics, physics, organic physics, and in the realm of spirit there is subjective, objective, absolute spirit. And what I intend to talk about in this video is the logic of essence, to illustrate some of the categories of the logic of essence applied to a topic, an economic topics, and the relationship between anthropology, psychology, economics, and law. Namely, I will briefly talk about the bell curve, and as long, maybe I won't always follow this rule, but I try to just provide the context. What am I talking about? And this view is really the most formal, the most abstract view of what God is, and it enables very simply to classify what am I talking about. So yeah, economics, psychology, anthropology, with the categories of the logic of essence. Yeah. First, let us briefly talk about, I've already talked about this, but actually here I'm in a good mood, because when I feel a little bit negative or a little bit down, I do not study logic, I do not read the books about logic, but I read my own notes, or I try to reconstruct with my own mind, and it makes me joyful. Me and Hegel, I said I wouldn't mention, I didn't say that, but I intended not to mention Hegel too much, but me and Hegel, we have a special relationship. Maybe one of the greatest love stories people will ever hear about. But there's also maybe a love story with Stella. I found a very nice picture. We'll see that eventually at the end of the video if I think about it. But yeah, The Bell Curve. It's a book officially published in 1994. It's a singular book about a particular society, the United States of America in the second half of the 20th century. And the universal topic could be IQ and in its impact on sociology, or sociology as such, or it depends. But let us say the bell curve, American society in the second half of the 20th century, and the universal would be the relationship between IQ and sociology. And in early 2000s, there followed a book by Mr. Richard Lynn, The Global Bell Curve, which is simply so the bell curve was a singular book, and this book by Richard Lynn, which followed a few years later, is also a singular book, but which elevates itself to the universal and descends in a way through scientific investigation to check if the hypothesis emitted by Einstein, Richard Einstein, who was Jewish, and Charles Murray, who embodies American common sense and represents American common sense, if the connection, the correlation between intelligence and class structure in America is valid in other societies, if one of the conclusions of the work, if it is valid or not, Richard Lynn has tried to check, and he has done this rather convincingly, but of course it's difficult to collect as many data and as much quantitative data in other societies than in the US, because it's less rigorous in terms of social organization and quantitative method, etc. But that's just an illustration of a scientific method, and these two books, it's really important here. The one brings about the other, because here it's a singular case. There had been precedents by Einstein in the 1970s already about IQ, income, etc., and inequality, but it's really a defining moment in the process of science, social sciences. It's a breakthrough, it's an important book, and it opens a new way for thinking about society, and this book, it could have been another, but it's a consequence. And here we have another book, more recent, by Matthew Battaglioli, published, I think, 2016, a young American from the Mises Institute, who uses the work of Murray, Einstein, and Richard Lynn to incorporate this in a work of social sciences, but it's not the same type of work, but simply when knowledge is made available, it creates a breakthrough in the scientific world, and then the new scientist, although here the content is very different. It's not a book about statistics, although there are statistics. It's more a conceptual work, one might say, in ordinary sense. It's more thorough thinking and etc. Than just collecting data and analyzing. It's more intellectual in a way. It's less Anglo-Saxon. But now the new thinkers, they incorporate the knowledge gathered by the discovery of sciences, here in the realm of social sciences, and it changes the intellectual perception of society. It brings about a change in epistemology, the method of acquiring knowledge, in sciences, and eventually in politics, because when people become aware, they act. That's the theoretical aspect, is to grasp the determinations of reality, how they are, to cognitively understand how a society functions in the case of the social sciences. And once the knowledge has been clarified, enlightened, then there is the political will, not necessarily by the same persons, but by others who become aware and familiar with this knowledge. There's the political will to implement change based on the newly acquired knowledge. That's what brings about political change. Here it could be a Marxist analysis, but an idealist Marxist perspective. What brings about, precisely not Marxist, but precisely an idealist interpretation of the changes of the working conditions and the social forces or whatever. New knowledge brings about a will and an attempt to implement social change. So it's not Marxist, but it's in regard to the change of the working conditions, the economic conditions, etc., brought about by an advance in the sciences. Yeah. That's for the introduction. And now I will use the categories to try to illustrate very intelligent, these Americans with their empirical data, but the Germans, they have a logical mind, a metaphysical mind, and I will just illustrate what I'm talking about. Here are some of data. They are not to be taken seriously because they are quite dated, or outdated rather. So here we have the standards in dollars. It's in the 1990s. The average income, median income per household for whites, blacks, Latinos. And when it is checked for IQ, namely when the IQ is 100, it's almost equal. I have erased the slight differences, but actually it's almost equal. So there are important differences. It's taken from the bell curve. I've changed slightly the numbers, but yeah, there are differences between the various ethnic groups. But when the IQ is taken into account, it's kind of fair, because for the same standard IQ of 100, all the ethnic groups in the US in the 1990s, they earned broadly the same amount of money. And in the year 2013, here it's the data from Matthew Battaglioli, there are inequalities, which are important. So there is, for all groups, for Asians, blacks, Latinos or Hispanics, whites, and there are important differences. And these differences bring about dissatisfaction among the population because of inequalities. That inequalities is not necessarily injustice, but it can be thought to be unjust if it's not fair, and that's the question that I will try to examine by using the categories of the logic of essence. And I will illustrate the importance of the use of the category. It's not always easy because, but here, for instance, in the case of inequalities in a multi-ethnic society, the categories here could be the substance or the thing. These are moments in the logical process of essence. And the substance of the thing, if it is citizen, the accidents or the properties would be the color. That's why sometimes people might be tempted to say people of color are at a disadvantage. So here, what they express in logical language, or what they don't express, but what they mean is actually that the substance in terms of all citizens are equal, and their accidents or their properties are their skin color. But that's not the proper way of thinking in this case, as showed by the works of Mr. Charles Murray and Richard Lynn and Richard Ernstein, etc., is that the substance which determines social status and income in democratic societies of free market, relatively free market, is more IQ, and the properties would be the market value. And then the difference in categories which are used is the difference between accusation of discrimination, which belongs to law and morality, or to acknowledge or to discover that there are an unequal distribution of intelligence, and then this belongs to the realm of nature. It can be partly socially influenced, but if the inequalities are caused is a determination of essence, if they are caused by injustice, it belongs to morality and law. But if it's just how things are by nature, it belongs to the realm of zoology or anthropology. And then who is to blame? Well, let's blame Darwin. But who is to blame for Darwin? Let's blame God. Darwin is one of my worst ideas. Or maybe it's one of the best. Yeah. No, seriously. No, that's very serious, in the sense that if the inequalities which are present, it cannot be denied, but if they are caused by injustice or moral wrong, discrimination against citizens who are supposed to be members of society, etc., it's unjust, and it's a determination of objective spirit. But if it is just the consequence of differences in natural determinations of anthropology or zoology, in the case of male versus females, etc., the sexual differences, it's not. There is no injustice. There can be frustration, but there is no injustice. There is no one to blame in this sense. That's the philosophy of Spinoza in this case. Yeah, but so we would use other determinations of essence. wirklich in ordinary English language means actual. It's what means really real. Real Realität would be reality. Realität is a German word, would be reality in English, and wirklich, or Wirklichkeit would be actuality or real reality. Yeah. And in ordinary language, I will not fall back into my German subtleties uselessly, but here it's important. What is wirklich is what is concrete, what is fully determined. This illustrates something which is fully determined. All the properties, the characteristics, the features are present. It's fully determined, it's concrete, and yeah, it is real in the sense. It's not abstract, it's real, it's fully determined. It's a singular object. And if we, let us take this book, it's concrete, it's wirklich, it's actual, it's not an abstract idea in the mind of the author, but it's a fully determined book, and it could be different, namely the color of the title could have been different, the consequences of egalitarian policies. The title could have been different. This is a possibility. The cover could have been another color. The size, then these are the decision of the publishers, and some chapters could have been longer or shorter, etc. So these are possibilities. So we elevate ourselves. No, it's not we elevate, but here and on the board we go from what is wirklich, what is actual, to what is possible, namely things which are the way they are, which are actual. They could be or could have been different. That's a possibility, an abstract possibility, but precisely it is abstract, and the possibility of a difference, possibility implies that it's different from what is wirklich. The possibility implies the possibility of another. If something is possible, it means that something else is possible as well. Otherwise, if there was just one possibility, it would not be possibility, it would be actual and also necessity. But yeah, if there is a possibility, there is the possibility of another, and we call this in philosophy contingents. Namely, this book could have been, the cover could have been green, that was a possibility probably. So if it was a possibility, it means that the blue-gray color is contingent. It is how it is, but it could have been different. That's why it's contingent, means it could have been, and possibility means it could be. Yeah. What is contingent is the way it is, but we can imagine that it could have been different. What is possible is not, it's just abstract in a sense. That's the connection between possibility and contingence through the mediation of actuality. It's quite simple. Yeah. And in order for something to become actual, the conditions have to be present, have to be made manifest, they have to be there, they have to have Dasein, I might say. But if the conditions are met, if the criteria are met, the thing becomes actual, but precisely there is if-then, that's a relationship of judgment, a hypothetical judgment, namely, if the conditions are met, the thing which becomes actual is de facto necessary because it could not have been otherwise. That's not a possibility, but that's the logical necessity which follows from the conditions being, the required conditions being met. That's quite complex, but I will illustrate. Precisely with the question of IQ and income, here are, we see, determinations which explain the success in a democratic, meritocratic society about income. In order to achieve social status, income, and what is considered success in a free market, bourgeois society, there has to be the possibility of exerting a job, that's the right or the law. Namely, the law has to tolerate and to favor or to enable that, to make possible, precisely, that's what is right. It has to, the law has to give the possibility of those who are willing to climb up the social ladder to do so. There has to be the motivation of the workers, the temper, the character. These are conditions. These are not possibilities. These are conditions in order to achieve income or status or success. There has to be the motivation and the character or the temper. So these are psychological determination. Then there's the IQ, the health, luck, good luck, and work. And work is that which actualizes, makes wirklich all the other conditions or possibilities. And in a meritocratic society, in order to be successful, all these, precisely here the logic is important, but if all these conditions are met, a worker will become successful. If he has the possibility, the legislative possibility, if he has the motivation, the temper, the character, the IQ, the intelligence, the health, good luck, or an absence of bad luck, and if he works, he will necessarily, if all the conditions are present, he will necessarily succeed independently of color, etc., etc. And if someone does not succeed, the logical cause is that not all the conditions were present. Namely, maybe he worked hard, he was lucky, healthy, he had a good temper, a good motivation, and he was allowed to work, but he did not have the IQ, therefore he could not achieve, he could not actualize what he wanted to do. That would be the logical explanation. And these are, I drew this very simply, but these are the criteria or the conditions of success in a society in terms of achieving social status in a bourgeois society. And if one can imagine someone has the right to perform, he has the motivation, or no, let us imagine a sportsman, a basketball player in the case of the US. He has the right to become a successful basketball, but he can succeed without a high IQ. I mean, it's still relevant in terms of sport, but he doesn't have to be a very high IQ. If the health is not present, if he constantly gets injured, he will not succeed, or he can, but he can be unlucky, he can succeed. Basically, if he just has the talent and the temper, one might say, and the right, he will succeed. It's enough maybe to succeed, even if he lacks motivation, if he's a little bit lazy, if he has health problems, injuries, etc. This is the story of sportsmen in soccer, in tennis, basketball, etc., etc. And then the difference between those who are talented and who really achieve in basketball or soccer, or bankers, CEOs, the directors, movie stars or whatever, it's the differences are differences of either IQ or motivation or temper or luck, etc., etc. But if all the conditions are met, then the thing becomes actual and it eventually becomes necessary. And the relationship if-then is a hypothetical judgment. And if the conditions are met, the criteria are met, then it will become necessary. And if not all the conditions are present, it won't happen. Namely, if someone is motivated, talented, in good health, he works hard, but there is discrimination, he's not allowed to start a business, then he won't succeed. And that would be, depending on the criteria, the morality of the society, the acceptance of foreigners, or etc., it would be unfair. But yeah. And these are relationships of cause and effect. The if-then is a hypothetical judgment, and the cause of success, or the causes of the success of an entrepreneur or a businessman, they can be found in his work ethic, his intelligence, his creativity, the circumstances, etc., etc. So in the realm of actuality or Wirklichkeit, there are inequalities between the various ethnic groups in multicultural, diverse society, multi-ethnic societies, but one has to think logically through using empirical data, but then think logically to seek what are the causes of these inequalities. Are they caused by injustice, which belongs to the realm of right, or by lack of of motivation, which belongs to psychology. I will not draw the. I will not draw. Okay, I will. It belongs to psychology. So then, to ask oneself the right question: if there are inequalities, what are the causes? Is it moral bankruptcy because there is a systemic racism? Is there discriminatory laws? Or is it a lack of motivation, a lack of intelligence from the part of those who fail to meet the standards, etc.? Is it bad luck, bad health? Who is responsible? Is it the social system? Is it what are the causes? Or how can we solve the problem, etc., etc.? But this is simply to illustrate how people spontaneously think, or how they ought to think, namely the common problems which are being discussed in academia, the media, the newspapers, etc. These are just logical categories, and the proper ones have to be applied. And yeah, and America is a country where successes, if anyone out there still believes that America is a country where all things are possible, or whatever Obama said, doubts, no, if anyone out there doubts that America is a country where all things are possible, for the good, yeah, but precisely, it's possible for individuals of all ethnic groups to succeed, because if the conditions are met, it will happen, but it's not possible that all groups can succeed equally, because there are differences either in motivation, temper, health, IQ, or work ethic, etc., etc. And in this sense, not everything is possible, obviously. Yeah. And then we can talk about mathematical proportions. The distribution of intelligence among all groups is broadly a bell-shaped curve, but the median IQ can vary depending on the position of the median. So let us say two groups with different average IQs. If the rules are fair, it is necessary that there should be success and failures on both parts, in all groups or in all layers of society. If the determination is not ethnic identity, but gender or socio-economic status of the parents, etc., etc., it is necessary that some should succeed and some should fail, but there has to check if the proportions, the quantitative proportions, are in adequation. Namely, here that would be these, they would have to succeed, and these as well, because they are the more intelligent. So there has to be, if we talk about social justice, there has to be a check if the quantitative proportions are respected. Namely, if a smaller group, either in terms of number or in terms of IQ, is adequately represented within a given proportion. These are statistical determination, and if not, what are the causes? What conditions made this impossible, or inactual, or etc., etc. Yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about briefly. Okay, I've talked for 30 minutes, but it's just to illustrate the importance of the categories. And yeah. And here I will conclude with these books. This book is wirklich. The possibility, and because it has become wirklich, it has opened the possibility of writing other books like this one, because possibility is contained within actuality, and in order for other books like these to become actual, the conditions had to be met to find the data in other societies, to investigate, to have the intelligence, the ambition, etc. And this is what Mr. Richard Lynn did, and he produced another actual book, another wirklich book, which was more ambitious. In a way, it's less impressive because it's not as much a breakthrough as this book, but it's nonetheless, in a way, it's more impressive while being less impressive because it covers a broader range of societies, and it expands the realm of science, social sciences, and help understand human societies. And yeah, so that's what I had to say. And yeah, just precisely I will just show the categories again. When we talk about inequalities, the proper categories have to be used, namely substance or thing. The thing and its properties becomes in the process the substance and its accidents. And when we talk about inequalities, if the substance, namely that which, here I speak in ordinary language, that which is hidden behind the accidents, behind the external properties, it's not citizens of different colors, which is important in the case of IQ. Is precisely IQ that would be the substance and the market value in a democratic modern bourgeois society. So if we say there are inequalities because of differences in skin color, that's a wrong. That would be genetic differences. That's a wrong interpretation. It's the IQ which causes the inequalities. Precisely, that's what the work of Charles Murray shows. But then, what causes the differences in IQ? This is a question of sociobiology. But in the realm of objective ergonomics, the social sciences, to think properly means to identify the proper substance which causes the different accidents, the different properties, the different manifestation. And many books have showed in the Anglo-Saxon world that this is majoritarily, in a significant quantitative proportion, this is IQ which causes rise and fall, decline and success in a bourgeois society with fairness in terms of equality, abstract equality of rights. So it's not racism on the part of the host society. It can exist. That's a possibility. But if the wrong categories are used, either it's an error or an intention to manipulate, but the proper categories have to be restored in order to think correctly. And in America, there are inequalities, but inequality doesn't mean injustice, and the statistics just in the case of income show that it's America, at least in the 1990s, was as egalitarian in the good sense of meritocracy, as egalitarian as it can get, and that's a success. Very few societies, because most societies from the rest of the world, they are nepotic in the sense that privilege of family ties over competence, whereas Europeans anthropological Europeans have consistently throughout history brought forth and created societies in which humans, which were overwhelmingly Europeans, but were judged more on their competence than on their ethnic belonging, and only white people do this consistently and as successfully as it has been and still is partly. So yeah, that's what I could say. That's the importance of studying logic, because it can enlighten many topics, and yeah. I will keep my picture of Stella, but I had to fall in love with you. That was not a possibility, that was a necessity. That's love, actually. Love, actually, hopefully you get the reference. Okay, here I'm starting to... but yeah, I just thought about this, so... this is social justice, the way I envisioned this, in a way, through German metaphysics, yeah, and Anglo-Saxon empiricism. because I've started here, I will end the video here, but I've started the day speaking in French to a French audience, but to everyone actually, but mostly a French audience, and now I need to recover my sanity and my breath and my inspiration by talking, not to Americans, to everyone, but I feel more comfortable when I speak English, paradoxically, and when I can speak to an audience which I know, although they are quite intellectually decadent, these Americans, but they have more references, and it's possible to talk, even if I talk alone, it's possible to talk about topics which are enlightening for everyone of all colors, people of whatever origin, background. If they want to understand their own societies, they have to read books written overwhelmingly by white people, but which explain the functioning and dysfunctioning of most societies. That's science. I was in a scientific mood to make this video. Yeah.